Welcome to the Dark History Case. Today we uncover one of the darkest secrets in human history, a secret buried for decades, sealed in classified files, denied by governments, and remembered by survivors who carried the truth in silence. This is the story of Unit 731, Japan's forbidden human experiments, a place where medicine was twisted into torture, where science became a weapon, and where thousands of innocent lives were extinguished in the name of war. A place so horrifying that even after World War II, the world hesitated to expose the full truth. To understand Unit 731, we must return to the 1930s, when the Japanese Empire sought to expand across Asia. Japan occupied Manchuria and created a puppet state called Manchukuo. But behind the political plans, another mission was unfolding, a mission to build the most powerful biological weapons program the world had ever seen. At the center of this mission stood a man named Shiro Ishii, brilliant, ambitious, and dangerous. He believed that biological warfare was the future of military domination. He convinced the government that Japan needed a secret research facility, one where scientists could test diseases, pathogens, and chemical weapons directly on living humans. To him, test subjects were not people, but materials. And so, in 1936, on the outskirts of Harbin, the Japanese military built a facility that looked like a small factory. Behind its walls was a nightmare. It was officially called the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, but inside it was known by another name, Unit 731. The complex stretched across more than 6 square kilometers. It had laboratories, prison chambers, underground tunnels, a crematorium, and rooms designed for experiments that defy the imagination. Barbed wire surrounded the outer walls. Guard towers overlooked every corner. No one entered without permission, and no one inside ever left alive. The prisoners inside came from everywhere: Chinese civilians, captured soldiers, political prisoners, women, men, the elderly, even children. Some were accused of crimes. Others were kidnapped from villages. Many were innocent people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Inside the walls of Unit 731, these captives were stripped of their names. They were called Maruta, a word meaning logs, because to the scientists, that's all they were, objects to be used and disposed of. Experiments began immediately. They were designed to test the limits of the human body, the spread of disease, and the effects of extreme conditions. Victims were exposed to deadly pathogens like plague, anthrax, cholera, typhoid, and smallpox, not through accidental contamination, but through forced infection. Scientists observed how long it took for symptoms to appear, how fast the body deteriorated, and which organs failed first. Some captives were locked in pressure chambers to test how the body reacts to extreme altitude. Some were put into freezing temperatures to study frostbite, their limbs frozen solid and then thawed repeatedly to measure the effects. Some were tied to stakes and exposed to grenades and flamethrowers, so researchers could study shrapnel wounds and burns. And then there were the surgeries, the darkest chapter of Unit 731. Victims were subjected to vivisections, surgical procedures performed while they were still alive. No anesthesia, no painkillers, no mercy. Organs were removed one by one. Limbs were amputated. Lungs, livers, kidneys, stomachs, all examined while the person was conscious. The goal was to study the body in its most natural state, without the interference of drugs. Some prisoners were deliberately starved to death to study hunger. Some were deprived of water to measure dehydration. Some were forced to drink seawater. Some were exposed to poisonous gases. Unit 731 also served as a testing ground for biological weapons. Fleas infected with plague were bred in massive numbers. Then they were loaded into ceramic bombs and dropped over Chinese villages. The result was catastrophic outbreaks that killed entire communities. In some reports, Japanese soldiers marched civilians into open fields and dropped biological agents from aircraft simply to study how fast the infection spread. The deaths were slow, painful, and carefully recorded by researchers who saw it as valuable data. Shiro Ishii believed that human experiments were the only way to create perfect biological weapons, and his superiors agreed. By the early 1940s, Unit 731 had become one of the most powerful divisions of the Japanese military. No one outside the military knew what was happening. Anyone who questioned the facility disappeared. The local population whispered stories about screams at night, strange smoke rising from the chimneys, and guards transporting bodies in covered trucks. But the truth remained locked behind steel doors. As World War II progressed, Unit 731 expanded. More prisoners arrived. More experiments were carried out. More lives were destroyed. Some scientists believed they were doing important work. Others followed orders out of fear. But all of them contributed to one of the greatest crimes in human history. In 1945, as Japan faced defeat, a terrible decision was made. The order came to destroy Unit 731. Documents were burned, buildings were blown up, laboratories were dismantled, and the prisoners, every last one, were killed to erase witnesses. When Soviet forces approached Harbin, they found only ruins. The truth of Unit 731 could have ended there. Buried, hidden, forgotten. But something unexpected happened. The United States discovered the facility's remains. They found surviving Japanese scientists. And they found fragments of evidence that revealed the horrors inside. Instead of arresting the scientists, the United States made a deal. In exchange for information about biological weapons, the researchers of Unit 731 were granted immunity. Shiro Ishii, the mastermind, lived the rest of his life in freedom. He was never punished. He never apologized. He never faced trial. While Nazi doctors were prosecuted in Nuremberg, the leaders of Unit 731 walked away untouched. Their knowledge was too valuable for the Cold War, and so the truth remained classified for decades. It wasn't until survivors, journalists, and former soldiers began speaking out that the world finally learned what really happened. Eyewitnesses described the experiments. Documents emerged from archives. Former scientists confessed their involvement. Piece by piece, the truth of Unit 731 surfaced, a truth the world could no longer ignore. Today, Unit 731 stands as a symbol of what happens when science loses its humanity, a warning about the dangers of unchecked power, and a reminder that even in war there are lines that must never be crossed. Thousands of innocent lives were taken. Most victims were never identified. Their families never learned what happened to them. But their suffering is not forgotten. Their stories are not lost. And their truth must be told, not to create fear, but to ensure that such horrors never happen again. This is the dark history case. And this was Unit 731, Japan's forbidden human experiments.